You want it. You dream about it. You even plan for it. And then, just when it's within reach, you ruin it. It's one of the strangest human battles. The war we fight isn't always against other people, or circumstances, or bad luck. The war is often against ourselves. Think about it. You say you want love, but you push people away at the very moment they get close. You say you want success, but you procrastinate until the opportunity passes. You say you want peace, but you stir up chaos the moment life begins to calm down. This is the paradox of self-sabotage. You want the very thing you destroy, and it leaves you asking questions that cut deep. Why would I ruin what I desire most? Why do I keep tripping over the same patterns again and again? Most people will tell you the answer is simple. They'll say it's laziness. They'll say it's weakness, or that you're just afraid of failure. But those explanations don't cut deep enough, because self-sabotage isn't random. It's strategic. It's your mind protecting something hidden, something you might not even realize you're guarding. That's the most unsettling part. Self-sabotage doesn't come from a place of recklessness. It comes from a place of protection. Your mind believes it's keeping you safe. Safe from success. Safe from change. Safe from responsibility. Safe from the parts of yourself you're not yet ready to face. And if you don't uncover what that something is, you'll keep hitting the same walls, no matter how badly you want to move forward. This is why self-sabotage is so frustrating. On the surface, you want progress. But underneath, your unconscious fears that progress will cost you something you're not ready to lose. So, the real question isn't, why do I fail? The real question is, what part of me is trying to stay safe by failing? And to answer that, we need to look at places most people never think to look. Because the roots of self-sabotage live in the shadows, in the fear of success, in the conflict between your desires and your identity, in your strange addiction to struggle, in the comfort zones that become prisons, in the chase for instant relief, and even in the silent influence of society itself. This isn't a story about laziness, it's a story about survival. And once you see what's really happening, you'll never confuse self-sabotage with weakness again. Because sometimes, what looks like destruction is really protection. But protection from what? Here's the paradox. Often, it isn't failure you're protecting yourself from. It's success. That might sound strange at first. Why would anyone fear the very thing they dream of? But look closer, and you'll see that success can be just as frightening as failure, sometimes even more. Failure, at least, is familiar. It stings, but it's predictable. You felt it before. You know how to recover. And in a strange way, it confirms your expectations about yourself. Success, on the other hand, is uncharted territory. It doesn't just give you something new. It demands something new from you. Think about what happens when you achieve something you've always wanted. People start watching. They expect more from you. You're no longer invisible. You're visible. You're no longer free from judgment. You're judged more harshly than ever. And deep down, you wonder, can I keep this up? What if I can't? Success means pressure. It means responsibility. It means stepping into a spotlight that reveals not only your strengths, but also your flaws. And here's the paradox. The very thing you desire, the recognition, the growth, the opportunity, becomes a weight your unconscious isn't sure you can carry. So it protects you by keeping you small, by making you procrastinate, by nudging you to quit before the finish line, by convincing you that comfort is safer than potential. The Stoics understood this. Seneca once wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." One way we waste it is by sabotaging ourselves before we're tested, because deep down, success threatens the comfort of staying the same. This is why people sometimes self-sabotage right before they achieve a breakthrough. The moment just before success is the moment the fear becomes unbearable. Because once you succeed, you can no longer hide behind potential. Now you have to live up to it. And so, the unconscious whispers, better to trip now than to fail later in the spotlight. But fear of success is only one layer of the story. Sometimes the sabotage runs even deeper, into who you believe you are. Because you don't just sabotage what you want, you sabotage what threatens who you believe you are. Your identity is like an invisible contract you carry with yourself. It says, "This is who I am. This is what I deserve. This is how my life goes." And as long as your desires stay within the boundaries of that contract, your mind lets you pursue them. But the moment your goals challenge that contract, when what you want doesn't align with who you believe yourself to be, your unconscious steps in to protect the old identity. That's why someone who grew up hearing, "You'll never amount to much," can sabotage opportunities to prove otherwise. Not because they're weak, but because success feels like a betrayal of the self-image they've carried for years. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden parts of ourselves we deny, suppress, or ignore. If you've always believed you're unworthy, incompetent, or invisible, those beliefs live in your shadow. And the moment you reach for something greater, the shadow pushes back. It whispers, "That's not you. You don't belong there. Stay where it's safe." This is why you can know exactly what you want, map out the steps, even feel motivated, and still not follow through. Because deep down, part of you fears not the goal itself, but what achieving it would mean for your sense of self. And here's the irony. The brain would rather be consistent than be happy. It would rather confirm the identity it knows, even if that identity keeps you small, than risk the unknown of growth. So you sabotage, not because you can't succeed, but because succeeding would shatter the story you've always told yourself about who you are. That's why breaking free of self-sabotage isn't just about chasing goals. It's about rewriting your identity, about allowing yourself to believe, "I am someone who can." But even when identity changes, another pattern often takes hold. A strange pull back toward the very battles you thought you'd escaped. Because here's the hard truth. Some people don't just endure struggle, they become addicted to it. Think about how many times you've said, "Once things calm down, I'll finally focus," only to create new chaos the moment life feels stable. It's not an accident, it's a pattern. Why? Because struggle feels familiar, and the brain craves the familiar, even when it hurts. Neuroscience has a word for this: homeostasis. The brain tries to maintain equilibrium, a normal state. If your normal has always been stress, conflict, or hardship, then peace doesn't feel natural. It feels wrong. So when things finally go well, part of you unconsciously disrupts it, dragging life back to the baseline you're used to. This is why some people sabotage healthy relationships, turning small issues into big fights. It's why others quit a stable job just when it starts to pay off, chasing another uphill battle. It's why some can't sit still when things are calm. They stir the pot because stillness feels unsafe. Psychologists call this trauma reenactment, the tendency to recreate the emotional conditions of our past, even when they're destructive, because they feel familiar. It's not pleasure we chase, it's recognition. We would rather suffer in a way we understand than thrive in a way that feels alien. But this is where the trap deepens. Because once struggle becomes your comfort zone, you begin to equate growth with pain. And so you sabotage peace the same way you sabotage opportunity. Because peace feels like emptiness, while struggle feels like home. This is one of the cruelest tricks of the mind. It convinces you that if you're not fighting, you're failing. That if you're not suffering, you're not moving. And yet, deep down, you know that's not true. Because not all progress comes from suffering. Sometimes growth comes from calm, clarity, and consistency. But to reach that place, you first have to admit something most people never say out loud. I don't just experience struggle, I seek it. And once you see that truth, you can begin to ask the real question. If I'm addicted to struggle, how do I ever feel safe and peace? The answer lies in the very thing we fear most, comfort itself. We call it the comfort zone as if it's a safe place. But sometimes, the comfort zone is the most dangerous place you can live. Why? Because the brain is wired for survival, not fulfillment. It doesn't ask, will this make me grow? It only asks, will this keep me alive? And if your current habits, even destructive ones, have kept you alive until now, the brain will fight to keep you there. This is the pull of homeostasis, your mind constantly trying to drag you back to normal, even when normal is slowly destroying you. Think about it. How many times have you had a breakthrough, started a new habit, found a healthier rhythm, or taken a bold step forward, only to suddenly backtrack? That backtrack isn't random. It's your brain pulling you back into the cage, whispering, "This is safer. Stay here." The Stoics understood this trap. Epictetus warned, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." But here's the irony. When we cling to comfort, we give up freedom. We let fear of discomfort dictate our choices, even when those choices quietly enslave us. Neuroscience confirms this. The brain's reward system releases dopamine when you avoid risk, because avoidance feels safe. But that safety is temporary. Over time, it starves you of growth, turning your comfort into stagnation. This is why people stay in jobs they hate, why they tolerate relationships that drain them, why they repeat routines that leave them restless. Because even misery feels less frightening than the unknown. And so, the comfort zone becomes less like a refuge and more like a prison. The walls aren't made of stone, they're made of habits. And the bars aren't locked by anyone else. They're locked by your own fear of stepping beyond them. But here's the truth. Every comfort zone eventually shrinks. What feels safe today becomes suffocating tomorrow. And unless you break the pattern, the cage closes in. This is where self-sabotage shows its twisted logic. It's not just about ruining opportunities. It's about defending the familiar, even when the familiar is killing your potential. So the question isn't just, why do I sabotage success? It's, why do I cling so tightly to the prison I built myself? And the answer is this. Comfort doesn't guard the cage alone. It has a partner, something more seductive, more relentless. The lure of pleasure itself. If the comfort zone is a prison, then pleasure is the warden. Because when you're trapped by comfort, you're usually also trapped by the chase for pleasure. The human brain was not built for endless stimulation. It was built for survival. But in the modern world, we live surrounded by instant rewards, notifications, junk food, scrolling, likes, endless little jolts of dopamine. And here's the trap. Dopamine isn't the chemical of pleasure. It's the chemical of pursuit. It makes you chase, not rest. It pushes you to seek another hit, another distraction, another quick escape. Buddhism described this long before neuroscience confirmed it. The Buddha warned that craving is the root of suffering. Not just craving for food or wealth or recognition, but craving for the next thing, the constant itch that never ends. And when that craving drives your choices, self-sabotage becomes inevitable. You start trading long-term fulfillment for short-term relief. Instead of working on the book you've always wanted to write, you scroll. Instead of saving for what matters, you spend on what soothes. Instead of facing the discomfort of growth, you reach for the comfort of escape. This is why goals collapse in the quiet moments. Not because you're incapable, but because the brain mistakes instant pleasure for safety. It rewards the distraction more than the discipline. And in that moment, sabotage doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like relief. But relief is not the same as peace. It's not the same as progress. It's just an anesthesia, a numbing agent that keeps you from noticing the life you're abandoning. Philosopher Aldous Huxley once warned about this in Brave New World. He imagined a society not ruled by pain or fear, but by pleasure, so comfortable, so endlessly entertained, that people stopped questioning, stopped growing, and willingly gave up their freedom. Sound familiar? We don't need a dystopia to live that story. We already do, every time we let fleeting pleasures dismantle what truly matters to us. So here's the paradox. You sabotage not because you hate your goals, but because pleasure distracts you from the pain required to reach them. And without realizing it, you sacrifice your future on the altar of the present. But this trap runs deeper still. Because sometimes the sabotage isn't about pleasure or comfort. It's about the unfinished business of the past, the wounds you never asked for but still carry. Many acts of self-sabotage aren't new. They're echoes. Patterns you didn't choose but inherited. Scripts written for you long before you were old enough to understand. Maybe you grew up with parents who were critical, who only noticed your mistakes, So now, whenever you get close to success, a voice whispers inside, "Don't get too far, you'll only disappoint." Maybe you were praised only when you performed, when you got the grades, won the game, or pleased the crowd. So now, success feels less like freedom and more like a trap, a performance you'll always have to maintain. Or maybe you experienced neglect, the quiet message that you weren't worth attention. So when opportunities finally arrive, you sabotage them, because deep down, attention still feels unsafe. Psychologists call this internalized conditioning. The brain absorbs these early patterns and stores them as unconscious rules. And as adults, we don't question them, we just obey them. Not because they're true, but because they're familiar. Neuroscience shows this too. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hypersensitive when you grow up in an environment of criticism or neglect. Later in life, that same sensitivity triggers when you step outside your comfort zone. You're not actually in danger, but your brain responds as if you are. Carl Jung saw this as the shadow at work again. The child within you, still unheard, still unhealed, keeps pulling the strings. And until you recognize that, you'll keep acting out the same script, again and again. This is why so many people sabotage themselves right at the edge of transformation. Because on some unconscious level, success feels like betrayal. Betrayal of the parents you wanted to please. Betrayal of the story you were taught about yourself. Betrayal of the identity you've carried since childhood. But here's the truth. You can't rewrite your past. What you can rewrite is the script you carry into the future. That means recognizing that the voices in your head are not yours. They're echoes. They're fragments of someone else's fear, someone else's pain. And the moment you see them for what they are, you can stop obeying them. You can stop confusing their judgment with your truth. But even childhood scripts don't explain it all. Because sometimes, the sabotage isn't just personal, it's cultural. It comes from the invisible hand of society itself, quietly shaping the choices you think are your own. Culture doesn't always reward individuality. More often, it rewards conformity. It teaches you, from the earliest years, to sit still, follow the rules, and stay within the lines. It praises obedience, not originality. And so, without noticing, you internalize the idea that fitting in is safer than standing out. But here's the paradox. The things you want most, your dreams, your creativity, your freedom, require you to stand out. And the very moment you do, you risk breaking society's unspoken contract. You risk rejection. You risk being called arrogant, selfish, unrealistic. So, what do most people do? They sabotage their own dreams before society has the chance to punish them. They preemptively quit so they won't be cast out. They shrink their ambitions so no one calls them delusional. They stay quiet so they don't upset the herd. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche called this herd morality. He argued that most people don't choose values on their own. They inherit them from the crowd. And the crowd doesn't value wisdom or individuality as much as it values safety, sameness, and approval. So, when you follow the herd, sabotage becomes a way of survival. You sacrifice your own path to stay within the group. But the cost is enormous, because when you abandon your own calling in order to please the collective, you don't just betray your potential, you betray yourself. Look around and you'll see it everywhere. People with dreams they never started, talents they buried, goals they quietly let die, because society made them believe it was safer to be mediocre than to risk being great. And the truth is, society doesn't even need to enforce this anymore. You enforce it yourself. The cage has been internalized. This is one of the deepest layers of self-sabotage, when you unconsciously serve the values of the crowd over the truth of your own soul. And unless you recognize it, you'll keep mistaking obedience for wisdom and safety for freedom. But here's the hope. The very moment you see that sabotage is not weakness but conditioning, not just personal but cultural, you begin to take back your power. Because awareness breaks the spell. And awareness is where the cycle begins to break. Self-sabotage isn't laziness. It isn't weakness. It's a defense mechanism, one that wears many disguises. Sometimes it shields you from the pressure of success. Sometimes it clings to the identity you've carried since childhood. Sometimes it holds on to struggle because struggle feels like home. And sometimes it trades growth for comfort, purpose for pleasure. Sometimes it obeys the voices of parents long gone. And sometimes it bows to society, shrinking your truth to fit inside the herd. But here's the thing. Once you see these patterns for what they are, once you drag them out of the shadows, they lose their grip. Because sabotage thrives in silence. It thrives when you don't question it. It thrives when you confuse it with truth. But awareness? Awareness breaks the spell. And here's the deeper truth. Self-sabotage isn't your enemy. It's a part of you that's been trying, clumsily, to protect you. It's your mind saying, I don't feel safe there. I don't know who I'll be if we change. I'd rather stay small than risk the unknown. But you don't have to keep obeying that voice. You can listen with compassion and still choose differently. You can say, I see why you're afraid, but we're going anyway. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That's the invitation here. To stop calling it fate. To stop calling it laziness. To stop calling it weakness. And to start calling it what it really is. A story you've outgrown. So ask yourself, what's one way I've been getting in my own way? What's one script I can stop obeying today? Because the moment you stop sabotaging yourself, you don't just change your results, you change your relationship with yourself. And that's where true freedom begins. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment below and write, I will stop getting in my own way. And share one habit or belief you're letting go of starting today. Let's make this a space where we hold each other accountable. Not for perfection, but for honesty. And if this video stirred something in you, if it helped you see your patterns more clearly, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this is just the beginning of the conversation. And we're going to keep going deeper, together.